MakerDAO.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the 8th Meet Your Delegate meeting. My name is Payton. I go by Pros11 online, and I am one of the governance facilitators here at MakerDAO. It's my pleasure to be hosting this meeting. This is a series where we get to meet our kind of applicants for the recognized delegate position and go over kind of their platform, their background, ask questions that should hopefully make it easier for maker holders to decide if they wish to get delegate. So this call is for ACREinvest, and I will kick it over to Kianga here to introduce herself and then talk about what brought her here, I guess.
Great. Thank you, Payton. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Really pleased to be here and super excited to offer our platform at ACREinvest for your consideration. I have a few slides, if it's okay. I'd love to just give you a little quick presentation, and then I totally look forward to spending most of this time with the question and answer.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So I am the founder of Acre of America, which is an impact investment firm, and we recently launched ACREinvest. And ACREinvest is a blockchain virtual network service provider. And we're really particularly interested in new technologies and rural problems. I'm speaking to you from Hudson, New York. That's in the Hudson Valley, about 2 hours north of New York City. And our mission is to regenerate the way capital markets work and for whom. So we're focused on Web3 infrastructure, tools, social incentives for DAOs, governance, peer-to-peer stakeholders, really looking beyond the horizon at where all of these forces in our world right now are converging, and what does an interesting business look like from a legacy financial markets perspective. So I've been in financial markets my whole career. I went to law school initially and worked on Wall Street, and particularly have been excited about what I've seen happen with Maker and what I see evolving in the space from my earliest days as a lawyer, which was the most fun, working with the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, kind of thinking about new markets, both from the legal, regulatory, but also documentation, how trading contracts and standardization of trading contracts could really facilitate new product growth. So in law school, so many eons ago, I was working on EMU, actually like the launch of the euro and kind of all of the implications of making that successful, the early days of credit derivatives. And so that kind of collaborative work in the context of a trade association really was, as I said, sort of intellectually interesting, technically, and I've often thought, in later years, how much fun I had at that point in my career, and I definitely see my role as a delegate in MakerDAO to sort of draw on some of those experiences. So we're a firm with our 3 general partners, and each of us kind of has our passions and special areas. Chris Lindstrom is here in Hudson and involved in a lot of initiatives around regenerative economy and local currencies. He's sort of in terms of like the green money discussion that's going to happen next. I've learned a lot from him in the year that we've been working together about impact and regenerative principles. And been thinking, of course, in the context of blockchain, how these two worlds can come together. Our other partner, Nick Feinberg, has been in the early internet infrastructure from like day one and runs a data center here in the Hudson Valley. So we've got a lot of experience and capacity around sort of the physical internet, structuring of support for the stuff that we're doing in the cloud. Just to get a little bit context about me and my perspective, where I'm coming from. This is how I got online when I was coming out of law school when I was a young professional. And this is where I got to cut my teeth at 85 Broad Street, working with the commodities traders, and later on at Lehman Brothers. So I was at Lehman in 2008, working with the energy business, and saw that implode from the inside. And so for a lot of us in this space, obviously this is a seminal world event and moment, and the kickoff of Bitcoin, and all of our concerns about structurally, our monetary system and our financial markets and how fragile they were, and sort of what needed to be done differently. Okay, so I'm also a lover of internet culture, and I've spent a lot of time over, I'd say, the past 10 years. So sort of after Lehman Brothers, I took a pause from Wall Street and sort of try to recover a little bit. And I did a lot of work in the art world and internet communications, and really actually have to credit that experience with helping me navigate crypto in like 2017 as an outsider, just because I was kind of familiar with memes and sort of surfing and online channels and setting up accounts. So I was pretty nimble from my time, my sabbatical from Wall Street in the art world, and my internet presence as such as it is now. I like to share and talk about what's happening in the world from a macro perspective, socially, politically. Well, not so much politics, but there's politics underlying I think a lot of the work that we're doing, and just to try to make it fun, a little bit more accessible for people, the masses, the normies that we really all want to recruit into the space. So this meme and these memes around work, and I'm having a little bit of a delay here on my screen, but have inspired what we're doing at ACREinvest, looking at disruptions in accessing talent, business models for companies. Obviously, being a DAO, it's like turning all of these principles inside out. So one of the things I'm super excited about is looking at the whole structure from a perspective of the governance, and just how MakerDAO can operate and be successful, this new model, and leaning into that. And of course, the regulatory issues and all of those things are interesting to me, on top of like the specific substance of the collateralized stable coin business model. All right, here is a diagram, just to spend 2 more minutes sharing with you about ACREinvest and kind of what we've been working on. This is a conceptual map for a decentralized mechanism that connects technology and capital with projects in the real world, and thinking very much about the hyper-local context. I think for me, coming to Hudson to establish our headquarters here just at the beginning of the pandemic, really helped me to focus. And I spent a lot of time kind of outside of the virtual realm and in the real world, wanting to understand what are the problems with adoption for what we're working on. Is sort of felt very strongly that in that moment, as we were shutting down the world, supply chains were breaking, from a local food economy perspective, the vulnerabilities were, glaring. All of the things that have been wrong, really began to be much more visible in ways that, I'm sure all of us on this call have been thinking about for a long time, but they began to really manifest. And I felt that, gosh, if what I'm focused on in terms of crypto and decentralized technology doesn't make a difference right now in people's lives, if people aren't using it, if it's not solving problems for business or business models, then what are we really even doing? So have been spending a large part of this year and last year really anchoring in place. And we're in a region of the country that's very rich in agriculture, but small and medium-sized farms. And so this diagram was kind of a way of thinking about how do we pull all of these pieces together? What does it look like? How can we use non-fungible tokens to map toward real property? What's a new model for converting conventional land to regenerative agriculture? So many of these projects that will have the kind of impact that many people would love to see in the world just don't have a functioning business model. And seems like what we're doing in crypto, I'm always talking to people and, they're like, there are these problems, like this doesn't work. I'm like, hey, have you heard about blockchain? Hey, what do you know about crypto? And they're like, what's that? What's that all about? And so again, it's like, I was like, okay, I can't just keep talking about the potential. Like, let's see if we can actually build a product that does all this. So that's given birth to ACREDAOs, which just literally launched a week ago, very new portal that we built as a sort of platform or structure for decentralized impact investment club. And we're having an open call this month and inviting anyone, everyone who is interested in these topics, would like to see how virtual assets can provide a solution kind of at the retail level. So really for the individual, but without regard to their capacity to invest. So something that can work for, the inherited wealth generation, next generation, like our partner, Cruz, or folks who may have, $1,000 at the end of the year, or even less. That's what's beautiful about the tokens and the token technology. But that this is a community for all of those folks to come together and workshop how to make compliant investments, what the tools are. And I definitely see, MakerDAO is like so core, and have thought a lot about how the DAI currency and the mechanisms could somehow integrate with this real world vision that we have. Just related to that, there's a secondaries or sponsorship pool that we've also launched, and using the newest tools in Web3. This is like the Juicebox platform that was made famous by Constitution DAO, and I was following that with just glee and amazement. And so, this moment is extraordinary, and I'm just thrilled to have the capacity now, and it's very aligned with our overall interest as a firm in serving decentralized communities and figuring out the governance question, delivering investment products, and hopefully drawing on this community of members within ACREDAOs to also expand our capacity, right? So that it's not just us as a firm that needs to bring all of the knowledge and all the capabilities to bear, but that if we design incentives in the right way and we use these structures, we can maybe incentivize and recruit people to work from their passions and do what they're best at. And so we're using source cred as well. So I've been excited to dig in on the source cred trial that Maker's been experimenting with. We're implementing that as well on ACREDAOs. And even I'm proud to say that one of our early founding members who's just joined that community has taken a real big interest in MakerDAO. And I've been talking to that person about potentially, also contributing just by learning, and that they will be able to earn acres within the ACREDAO platform for any time that they spend on something like this. And that, there's a huge pool of talent that this person's already working, a young person working in credit on Wall Street. And my view is this is much more interesting. This product knowledge is way more interesting, and you're going to put yourselves head and shoulders. If you want to stay on Wall Street, you're going to have everybody there wrapped around your pinky finger. Or if you ever want to leave, what we're doing here is obviously the future. So I just want to, definitely bring all that we're doing to bear personally in terms of delegation. I'm the person doing the voting and making the decisions. I want to listen to everyone in the Maker community and others that I may be able to recruit to follow along and participate. But in terms of, so I think it's a little bit best of both worlds. We have some of the support of an institution and acting as an institution, but there's not like an internal kind of like I'm the monarch as far as what the actual votes are going to be, and we'll see how that may evolve over time. So with that, I hope that was quite long, but I hope that was useful, and I'd love to dive into any more specific questions, comments.
Excellent. Really appreciate that presentation. And yeah, we got about 15 minutes here for questions. I didn't see anything pop up in chat, so I'm happy to break the ice and ask the first one, but I'll be silent for a few moments in case someone else has a burning desire here.
I look younger.
Yeah.
Maybe because my business is my baby, not to throw moms under the bus, but I don't know, maybe that's it.
Excellent. Well, so in your delegate platform, you mentioned that like compliance is one of your three like kind of top areas. And in the presentation just now, a lot of stuff kind of pertaining to real world assets and tokenization of those. So I was curious if you could maybe talk about some of your views in terms of like how do you go forward with the DAO in terms of keeping compliance in mind when dealing with these real world asset structures that perhaps the law hasn't exactly caught up to in the crypto space?
Yes, it's a hugely important issue, and it ties in with my other value, creativity, because I think for all of this to succeed, and the world really needs us to succeed, we are in a larger context of a TradFi world, and in order to scale, we need to think through. I mean, these are my views, obviously. Think through the existing regulatory framework and how we're building will be characterized by that legacy system, either sort of factually or from a legal perspective, or even just sort of politically. Like right now, I think there's congressional hearings here in the States about stable coins and the issuers of stable coins. And what I see is a convergence of our banking rules, our banks looking, or this is sort of merger that's eventually, I think, just going to happen. So there's a lot that I see will happen. And so the creativity is about like being thoughtful and structuring, being very careful about our words, thinking about the framing of what we're doing in a way that it has like kind of a clearer path forward potentially, or at least preserve certain arguments that align with how we want our space to be viewed. It's sort of like some of the earliest work that I did in credit derivatives as an intern in law school, met with the central bank of France, met with the Bank of England, met with members of the Fed. And the argument at the time was that credit derivatives should be regulated because they're not insurance, right? They're risk. They're sort of, so there's a trade association that's, has an army of lawyers and a staff that's writing position papers, that's making a legal argument that excludes our activity from, either excludes it or exempts it. And so this is how the derivatives industry has been so successful. When I started, it was largely unregulated. That's changed a lot since 2008, but there's always an analysis, right? There's always like an argument. So I would just be very, very, very engaged and involved in thinking about, all of the potential roadblocks and the sort of threats potentially, and anticipating how we can shape and define and language all of our actions. And that may not solve all of the issues. At the end of the day, there's going to be some litigation. There's going to be new laws. There are going to be cases to make kind of new law. We need new precedents because what's happening is unprecedented. So compliance is very much like a friend of what we all want. I know there's other views, and I think there's still such an important role for being anon. There's an important role for not worrying about the rules, and we have to be also careful because we're doing something different. We want it to succeed, and there's some things in the legacy system that are maybe against our values or inherently like what we're trying to disrupt. So that's where the creativity also comes in. So it's like, okay, how do we do it? And how do we avoid like being too compliant or asking for permission and like also, you know, cannibalizing our potential results or our, yeah. So it's involved, but that's a little bit about compliance. Very important, but also a fun challenge.
Yeah, appreciate the response there, and very neat to kind of have that credit derivatives background. So I've got another one lined up, but we'll pause again and see if anyone else has any questions at the moment. All right, getting one, and yeah, go for it.
Sorry, Payton. Hey, Kianga, thank you for making this presentation, and nice to meet you. I was just wondering, with your background, how you felt about delegates having the ability to go up to Washington, D.C., or travel down to Washington, D.C. in your case, and kind of do some lobbying work, or what's your thought on lobbying, you know, being that you have a background, and I believe you mentioned you were a member, or maybe not, of ASDA, I think it's called. So I was wondering what your thoughts were behind that, and kind of getting the politicians down in Washington, D.C. to kind of like understand exactly what we're doing here. And yeah, just your thoughts on that.
Sure. I would say, yeah, I was a lawyer for ISDA. So I was an attorney and sort of outside counsel for a trade association. And I think the question of lobbying is, I'm not an expert. There's a lot of sort of rules around that activity. So I'm not sure. It's something I will think a lot about in terms of the delegate role and what exactly that would mean, and whether it actually would be appropriate for delegates to be lobbying. My initial thought is maybe not. I think, but that overall, a way that I plan to hopefully contribute to that is through my blogging, writing. I mean, I like to, and I sort of have to turn up the dial on this, but it's a big part of what I want to do in this role is communicate to the little bit more of a general audience about what's happening in non-technical terms, and potentially just sort of putting that kind of perspective out into the world in an indirect way can help influence policymakers or those close to the policymakers. Because absolutely the dialogue has to occur at that level. Not sure again, and I'm mindful of the time, if that's the appropriate role for a delegate. And I want to address Julian's question in the chat of how Maker works. I'm learning fast. I'm a fast learner. Definitely going to spend the holidays, absorbing as all the details and nuances. So, give us another couple weeks, and then by the new year, you'll see us, kind of really start to engage and participate. I think it's luckily a good time because I know some things are slowing down for the holidays. But I think just last thing I wanted to say, I mean, there were some conversations last week about, sharing power, incentives, skin in the game, the different communities or stakeholders in Maker, not all of whom have sort of Maker token power, or I'd love to just continue to talk, and I have some thoughts that I will share in the forum about how we can think more broadly about what skin in the game means, and whether the delegates having significant Maker tokens is and are aligned in terms of the short-term profit or value of the token, how that might potentially be unhelpful in terms of having objective views on voting that look at the long-term value, or that look at the things that might benefit other people in the ecosystem that may in the short term not be something that those who have large holdings of the token might like. So I'd like to contribute to thinking about these incentives, and not so much power sharing, but how to change some of the dynamics so that regardless of that there's different ways power can be levered in the system that's appropriate, that gives that kind of wonderful balance that Satoshi was able to figure out, of not having a central party in control.
Awesome. Thank you for that response. So probably got time for like one more juicy question here, or maybe a couple short ones if you've got something. Now's kind of your chance. Otherwise, I got a good one perhaps to end on.
I'll try to be brief.
Nah, like I said, we started a couple minutes late, so try to be fair and giving all the delegates 30 minutes. Awesome. Seeing someone unmute there. Yeah, you got a question? Perhaps not. All right. So I will fire away then. In talking to you and getting to meet you, you mentioned, how wonderfully unique Maker is in terms of kind of being at the forefront of both DAO and all these different types of building. So I was wondering from here what your thoughts are on scaling and like optimal growth strategy are, being that we don't have like a ton of people to glean information off of.
Yeah, I think that the operations model is key. So, attracting talent. So I would say that the trials around source cred is really terrific. How people can be compensated monetarily. I mean, I think at the end of the day, most people can't afford to spend time on something if it's that opportunity cost. They have to like pay the rent and other things. And so we don't want a system where the only people who can afford to participate, don't need to get paid for their time. So I think that, so I'll just highlight again the source cred. That's a beautiful model where anyone can just come in, register, and they can potentially earn something recognizable without, kind of having to be a delegate or have the capacity to do something on a large scale. So I think that model, and then maybe also the marketing, like kind of communicating this, making Maker a little more sexy, translating what's really, really difficult and complex stuff I actually love to dive into, but that's the product side is just one side. So I would say that these really making it more accessible and interesting for people to need fresh blood to come in and engage would be like number one.
Right on. Thanks for sharing those thoughts. So as we wrap up here, if people want to get in touch, ask you further questions or what have you, what's the best way to do?
I'm in the Discord, ACREinvest, #2401, and obviously the forum. Those would be the best two ways. I'm also on Twitter a lot. So personally, my primary social tool is really Twitter, at K Davrington. And I also post on Instagram. I have a blog. I mean, if you saw the earlier slides, but really in terms of like the delegate work, the Discord and the forum would be just to keep everything very consolidated, and I won't miss your messages there.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much for doing this meeting, for letting us get to know a little bit about you. For people on the call, by the time your next meeting's over, you should see the ACREinvest possibility to delegate on the voting platform, vote.makerdao.com. If you're watching on the YouTube, it should already be up. So thank you so much for this, and look forward to engaging and participating with you in the community.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much, everyone.
Excellent. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
MakerDAO.